we'll let everybody in. Okay.
Just tell me when.
Morning,
all right, I think we're ready. Awesome, Marissa, we are ready. Oh, wait, this should be creative thinking. It's okay.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome.
Good morning, beautiful people from all around the world. How are you? Tell us where you're logging in from today. Drop it in the chat box. Weta, good morning. Oakland, welcome.
Hi, everybody.
Good morning, Stockton, Boston, Canada. Love it. Elk Grove, Silicon Valley, London. Hey, welcome. Big
Georgia.
Go to Georgia. Hey, San Jose, San Mateo, Malaysia. Wow. Welcome, Malaysia. Thank you. London, Egypt, Liverpool, Vietnam. This is amazing. Kentucky, Lodi, LA. Great to have you all here. I know some of you are up early, some of you are up late. Thank you, thank you, thank you for taking a moment out to share with us. New York, not so sunny South Florida. I hear you. Belgium, love that.
John, good to see you.
Kuala Lumpur, I was there in 2014. As you type in where you're from, I think, you know, that some of the places I've been to and I have fond memories, and other places I'm like, ooh, I want to go there. I want to go there. That would be cool. Memphis, Tennessee, been there. Belgrade, welcome. Wow, 10:30 in Vietnam. Thanks for being here. Is it day? Am I saying that correctly? Welcome to you. Virginia, hey, Lena, welcome. Sacramento, woohoo, Springfield.
All right, we are at 8:31. So go ahead, I'll go ahead and get started. And James, we still have some people joining in, so we can welcome everybody in the chat. Amazing. Hi, everybody. My name is Carly. I am our Director of Programming for Community Events here at Learn It, and it's always a pleasure to be here with you on Friday mornings. With me, I have our Events and Community Coordinator, Marissa Ruiz, who's a lot of the brains behind these events, and the wonderful James Jeffley, who will introduce shortly, but many of you know if you have been joining us week over week here. But if you are new to Learn It, I want to welcome you. And we are a learning and development organization based out of San Francisco, California. We train and help people develop skills on really the skills needed to thrive in today's workplace, in today's really just overall environment, and to also help you thrive and keep building on those skills going into the future. As we all know, we're in a state of rapid change. And the world is really in flux right now. And so adapting, staying resilient, using skills like creative thinking and problem solving are really top of mind, and also really going to be the basis of being better humans and better leaders this year and into the future. So if you're a veteran of this program and Learn It, if you're a current Learn It customer, thank you for being here. We're thrilled to be in partnership with you, and we're thrilled to see you learning with us week over week at these community sessions and in some of our longer form workshops. So a little bit of context for everyone, just so we're on the same page on how these events work and kind of what you can expect. These events by Learn It are part of a weekly community events series, and we host these events based on a monthly theme. So this event is actually picking up on our event from June of creativity and innovation. And going into this month of July, we're focusing on the athlete's mindset. So for the rest of the month, we'll actually be speaking with a lot of former athletes, performance coaches, people like James as well, on how we can all adapt and think like athletes, especially with kind of the Summer Olympics and the Olympic trials going on right now. And just some context on these sessions, these are always led by subject matter experts. So our internal team of instructors, like the amazing James Jeffley, and we also bring in guest speakers and thought leaders to partner on these events with. Just a couple of housekeeping items. This event will be recorded and we will provide the slide deck and all resources to help you keep learning. They're all available in our free community called Offsite, which I will share a little bit more about at the end of the session on how you can join. Offsite is currently free, and there's a lot of great benefits in there as well. So again, I'll speak on that at the end of the session, so stick around. As well as this session is really meant to be interactive. So we try to emulate these events off of more of our full-length workshops. So we encourage you to engage in the chat. James will be asking some questions. We pulled the community in Offsite before this. So these are meant to be interactive, and we love getting your feedback. So with that, I want to introduce all of you to James Jeffley. James is an award-winning international speaker and trainer. He's a professional coach, author, musician, and minister. And he has been doing this for quite some time. We're in great hands. He's amazing at connecting people from really all over the world. And so in our book, there's no better person to really connect and facilitate these sessions for this community because we have people from all over the world. And he's also a member of Toastmasters International and an acclaimed public speaker. So I really want to thank James for being here, for being just a voracious leader of these sessions throughout the last couple months and helping us all through the pandemic and this transition. So James, with that, take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Carly. Let me switch that up. Can everybody see and hear me and see my slides? Are we good? Welcome. What a global community. Thank you all for getting up or staying up and being here today. This is exciting. I'm so glad and honored to be here with all of you. Welcome to Creative Thinking for Problem Solving. Again, I'm James Jeffley. So what we want to talk about today are 4 things. Do we become less creative as we get older? How many of you feel like, and just raise your hands if you have your cameras on or drop it in the chat box. How many of you feel like as you get older, maybe you're not quite as creative as you used to be when you were younger? All right, we got a few hands going up, right? Want to give you a step-by-step method to try to solve problems creatively. We also want to share some real-world practices with you that you can use to bring creativity back and also to help solve problems, and how to rationally evaluate creative ideas. So let's dig in. So do we get less creative as we age? How many of you think that's true? Just raise your hands or drop it in the chat box. How many of you think we get less creative as we age, right? How many of you think it's true, but you don't want it to be true? No, as I approach my next birthday, I do not want to feel like I'm less creative. Well, yeah, we do. Oh, there's research on this. Some researchers at the University of California, Berkeley, did some studies, and they suggest that creativity generally, this is not true for everyone, but generally speaking, it tends to decline as we get older. And as adults also resort to less creative thought processes than children do. How many of you used to have wild, imaginative, creative ideas when you were younger? Right? And then you got older, and then you learned about bills and work and having your own kids and try to get stuff done. And then it's like, nobody's got time for that, right? Life shows up. And yeah, somebody says in the chat box, perhaps we get more afraid to make a mistake. Absolutely. Here's what else they discovered. Here's some good news. You may be able to recover some of your creativity. What? Absolutely. So here's how. Here are 3 steps to try to recover your creativity. If you feel like you've lost the edge, try this out. Number 1, entertain the non-obvious. They did an experiment where they presented 4 different groups: preschoolers, pre-adolescents, teenagers, and adults. 4 different groups. They gave them 2 scenarios and 2 possible hypotheses that could explain each scenario. One hypothesis was an obvious, clear explanation, while the other was unusual, non-obvious. Which one do you think the adults chose? They chose the obvious hypothesis, right? The children more often chose the non-obvious hypothesis. hypothesis. So most of the time, creativity, however, is in the non-obvious choice. The thing that doesn't appear, oh, well, clearly that's the answer. Creativity is usually in the thing that you hadn't thought about, right? So when you're searching for ways to explain observations, or you're doing brainstorming, new ideas, encouraging yourself and your teams you got to set the obvious explanation aside. You're trying to solve problems. Well, we think it's definitely this. Yeah, it might be that, but let's put that aside for the moment. Let's consider what else it could be. And then you just freeform throw some ideas out there, right? No ideas are wrong. It doesn't mean you adopt all ideas, but you entertain other ideas. It may slow you down, but you know what? It may also spark creativity. So take the obvious, set it aside, and brainstorm some non-obvious ideas. Does that make sense, folks?
Yes.
Second way to recover creativity, consider situation before disposition. In another part of the same experiment, researchers shared a social situation with the same different age groups. Again, there were two possible explanations for why people were behaving in this social situation. One focused on people's traits. This is how they are. They must be risk averse. The other explanation focused on the circumstances that made the person feel less safe in that situation. Which one do you think the adults chose? Disposition, the traits. Well, we think they're just this way. This is their character. This is how they are. The children more often chose the situational one. Well, there must be something going on that's affecting them and why they're acting this way. So according to social psychology, adults are more likely to attribute outcomes to people's nature or character rather than the situations they're in. How many of you find yourself doing that? You think, oh, well, the reason why that's happening for them is because it's some character trait. Yeah, somebody has to repeat that. Social psychology says that adults are more likely to attribute outcomes to people's nature or their character rather than the situations they're in. In other words, the reason why this is happening to that person is because that's how they are. That's their character, that's their trait, that's their value system. That's disposition. Versus situation is, well, the reason why they're behaving that way is because they're in a really horrible situation right now. Think about this. How many of you behaved a certain way, let's say pre-COVID? Remember that? And then COVID comes along. How many of you wound up changing some aspect of your behavior because of COVID? Right? So you could say, well, that's just how you are. Those are your traits. No, that's situational. So that's what we're talking about here. The third thing you might be able to do, and so the idea here is if you have this kind of bias towards disposition versus situation, you might actually miss significant details about what's going on in the environment and how that's affecting the person. So when you're coming up with new ideas, new processes for things for your customers, for employees, et cetera, don't just think about who they are. Think about their situational context, because context winds up being everything. And that may help you solve unmet needs in new ways. How many of you remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Yes.
Right? When everything's going great, we can be up here at the highest levels, right? Esteem, self-actualization. But you throw in a global pandemic for 15 months, bam, most people pop down at the beginning to the first couple of levels, right? Physiological needs and safety and security. Now, maybe most of us have popped up to belonging or esteem or maybe the higher levels. But initially, when there's a major event, we're not all operating at our best selves. That's not a trait. That's a situation. That's a circumstance. Here's the third thing to try and recover some creativity. Stop believing everything you think. Ignore what you know or what you think you know. How many of you have done this? You've been so adamant, I know that it's this. And then you learn some new information that was you could not ignore it. And now this is cognitive dissonance. you believe this, but now here's this experience staring you in the face. And you're like, but I don't want to believe the new information that's staring me in the face, but I can't hold on to my old belief anymore. My brain hurts. Who's had this before? That's cognitive dissonance, right? So when you're faced with new information, I think one of the things that gets in the way of us being more creative is ego. Our attachment to what we think we know, our attachment to being right. And because of that, we don't want to consider new information, because new information could just destroy all of that. I used to believe this, but now here's this new idea. And if I accept that, the thing that I believed for the last, 100 years of my life, I have to let go of. I've built entire systems around this belief system, and now this new information has made that obsolete. Yeah, some people would call that evolution. So in the final experiment, researchers shared new information with the participants that was meant to change whatever explanation they had previously chosen. Children were more adept at changing their explanations, while adults tended to lean on their previous ideas, despite the new data. Despite the new data, the children were more flexible, the adults less flexible. So knowledge and experience are frequently beneficial. They can be useful things, but they can also steer us in the wrong direction. So to lower this risk, you got to take time to pause and deliberately consider new information when you receive it. And you got to be okay with that new information changing what you already think or know or believe. How many of you have found it more difficult as you grow older to say this? You know what? I guess I was wrong about that. Anybody find that more difficult to? Yeah, and sometimes we are, right? So as adults, we have the benefit of being able to exploit existing knowledge as a shortcut to processing new information. But children need to take time to explore and discover. So creativity is not about efficiency. I'm going to repeat that. Creativity is not about efficiency. We can't get younger, but we can certainly find new creative ways to think like kids. And part of that is giving ourselves time to step back from the quick answer and explore what else could be. Does that make sense, folks? Okay. Could something else affect creativity? Yeah. We tend to become more risk averse as we age. How many of you notice that's been true for you? Tend to take less risks the older you get. So generally over here, where's my mouse? There's my mouse. So generally over here, right, when we're young, yeah, we're willing to take, some more risks. But as we get older, right here in our teens and early 20s, mid 20s, et cetera, we probably graduated, maybe we started a family, et cetera. It's like, oh, hey, I'm not I'm not going to bungee jump anymore. I'm not going to go skiing or doing this other stuff. And then as we get even older, our proclivity to take risks, that decreases. Now, it's interesting that some of the research shows it kind of levels out here after a while. So there's a certain amount of risk we might be willing to take, but these are calculated risks, right? And so risk aversion also increases whenever we have a catastrophe, whenever we have difficult, challenging situations like, I don't know, an economic crisis, a global pandemic, wildfires, things that affect us down at Maslow level 1 and 2. There's another thing that can affect creativity, and it's fear. It's fear. Whether it's age, it's gray matter, it's creativity, change. Creativity equals change because you're destroying something in many cases, and change is scary for most of us, right? How many of you hear that word change and you're like, oh my, you clutch your pearls. Anyone? Like, ooh, there's a change. There's going to be a change at work. What? We have to change? Oh, no. Right? Creativity is risky, but we have to do it. If the caterpillar actually understood what was going to happen to it when it went into the cocoon, it probably wouldn't go into the cocoon. Do you know what happens in that metamorphosis process when caterpillars turn into butterflies? They go into the cocoon and then they fall apart completely. They decompose down to their essence. They basically collapse into a puddle that doesn't look anything like a caterpillar. And out of that little puddle, the butterfly starts to take shape, right? So this is creativity. This is creation itself. And it's not some animated Disney fantasy where the caterpillar falls asleep in a soft shell and then it wakes up with wings. No, it is messy. It is violent. It is ugly. But at the other end of it, woohoo, you have this beautiful thing that did not exist before. Sometimes we say we want to change in life, but many of us don't really. Because in order to change, we need to change ourselves. But to live through the kind of metamorphosis that we're talking about, that we claim that we crave, we have to surrender something. In many cases, we have to surrender everything. So the human psyche will often mistake the familiar with the good. We tend to cling to that which we know, even if it's unhealthy or it's making us miserable, just to feel like we understand what's going on and have some sort of control over it. Now, we're told, let the old, world inside of us, our habits, beliefs, etc., die and disintegrate. But all too often, what we say we want to change, we just conveniently forget about that. And in our heads, we just jump to the rosy conclusion that we want. There can be no evolution, no resurrection unless you die first, or some part of you, a habit, a behavior, it goes away. All right. Fear. Fear is one of the things that stops us from seeking creative solutions to problems, taking risks, or innovating. How many of you have had a creative solution or an idea to solve a problem, but you were afraid of what that meant, and so you poo-pooed that idea, right? Okay. What did that cost you? What could you have had if you had just felt the fear and did it anyway? See, here's why we have to be innovative. Here's why we have to be creative. Darwin said it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most responsive to change. It has never been survival of the fittest. It is survival of the most adaptable. And in order to adapt to an ever-changing world, we have to be creative. So, how do we solve problems creatively? Well, let's turn to Captain America. Anybody see this movie? You remember this? Whatever studies I'm quoting will be in the links to those will be in the notes section of the slides.
That flag means we're only at the halfway point. First man to bring it to me gets a ride back with Agent Carter. Move, move! Come on, get up there! That's all you got. This army's in trouble.
We got to get the flag at the top of the pole.
Come on, get up there!
Trying to climb it.
Nobody's got that flag in 17 years. Now fall back in the line.
17
Come
years.
on, fall in. Let's go.
Probably
Get
tried
ready
the
to
same
formation.
thing. This guy comes
Rogers,
along.
I said fall in.
Thank you, sir.
So what'd you take away from that, folks? Drop your comments in the chat box. What I take away from that is sometimes creativity is the simplest thing. It's not complex. It's beautiful. It's simple. Don't follow the tribe. Love that. Think on your own. Don't do it the way it's always been done, right? So Here's some other ways to engage the brain in creative activities and to spark your creativity. Number one, hang out with creative people. How many of you know creative people? Because you tell them, oh, you're so creative. Hang out with them. See what they do. I don't know, COVID and masks and social distancing and all of that. So hang out on a Zoom call or in a park someplace, or if you're all vaccinated, right? Second thing, do something new each day or each week. Push yourself. Hey, I'm going to do a new thing, right? Even if you go a different path to the same destination, or you try a new thing, you learn a hobby, you watch a video on something new, you explore a subject you've never explored before. Make it a point to do something different every day. Number three, interrupt your familiar patterns, right? If you're used to getting up and doing the same thing the same way every day, change it up a little bit, right? Monday, I'm going to do something a little different. I'm not going to start off my day with this. I'm going to start off my day with something else. Read. How many of you have gotten your creative juices flowing because you read something? Oh, wow, that's a brilliant idea, right? So expand your mind, read some new things, learn something new. How many of you have learned a new thing during the pandemic? You developed a new hobby, right? Okay, so there you go. We shouldn't need a global pandemic to force us to try new things, right? All right, so we're going to do a quick little exercise here. And what I want you to do is click on this link in the chat box. Click on that link in the chat box, and that's going to take you to a page on Mentimeter. Now, don't type anything there yet. What we're going to do is we're going to take 1 minute. We're going to see how creative we can all be. 1 minute. And in this 1 minute, what we're going to do is type a different use for a paper clip. Think about a paper clip. Click on that link, and I want you to type one different way of using that paper clip. Click on the link in the chat box, go to that page, type in one new way of using a paper clip. Let's see how creative we are. Toothpick, opening a lock, reset your phone, jewelry, lockpick, pick a door lock, hanging Christmas ornaments, door opener, hair clip for your hair, key to open the doors, a hook, earrings, open a CD drawer, key for simple locks, hanging ornament, a lot of lock picks in here. That's a common theme. What are you all doing? Cleaning out your phone connector, tiny spaces, removing the SIM card, phone case removal, sculpture, necklace, reset your PS4 controller, keychain, phone resetter, button closure, finger cleaner. Well, sealing a food packet, jeans button, right? Make a hole, a money clip, hanging curtains, pit a cherry. How many of you are looking at this going, I never thought of using it that way, right? So one of the other ways to spark creativity is engage the herd, engage the crowd, engage the team, and stop. Art projects, close a bag of chips, a ring, reset things, right? We come up, dozens of different ways of using a paper clip because we leverage the power of our collective intellect. Was that cool?
That was cool.
What other creative things can you come up with if you simply work with other people, right? Think of alternate uses. What other ways can we do this, right? So here's another thing to talk about. We're going to talk about some step-by-step processes for solving problems now that we've talked a little bit about creativity. One of the other things to ask yourself is when you try to solve a problem, ask yourself, do you have a problem or do you have a polarity? What? They're different. Sometimes we try to solve polarities and we struggle because we can't. Here's what I mean by this. Some challenges are polarities to manage rather than problems to solve. Here's the difference. A problem can have a right or best answer. There's usually a solution to a problem. A polarity, however, also described as a paradox, a conundrum, a contradiction, is an ongoing dilemma. It is unsolvable and it contains seemingly opposing ideas. Let me give you an example. Here's some examples of problems. Should we hire candidate 1 or candidate 2? There's an answer to that. Which software should we buy? There's an answer. Look at your needs, look at your budget, etc. Regulation and compliance. Should we comply with the rules? Yeah. Otherwise, prison, fines, etc. Should improve customer service. There are solutions to that. Apple versus Android. That's a little harder, but there are solutions. Mac versus PC versus Linux. There are solutions to that. Does this make sense, folks? Right? Here are some examples of polarities. Should we inhale or exhale? What's the answer? Drop it in the chat box. Both. If you just try and do one, at some point you're going to pass out because you're not doing both. Should we focus on the team or the individual? Both. Should we strive for stability or change? Both. You sense the pattern here. Autonomy or collaboration? Both. Should we work in the office or work at home? Both. I just snuck that in there. That was me being a little snarky. But unless you're an essential worker and you can work from home because you have been, my answer is both. This is not a problem to solve. It's a polarity to manage. You get the difference between problems and polarities? We teach a class called Move from Operational Manager to Strategic Leader, in which we talk about this in greater detail, and we lay out a process for how to manage polarities. I want to show you two more tools to help you get to the root of things and step-by-step for gaining clarity and solving problems. You got to get curious. You got to get curious. How do we solve problems? You got to get curious. And one of the ways to do that is start asking critical thinking questions. Here are a few. What's the real issue here? What's the real issue here? How many of you tried to solve a problem before and the solution you came up with did not work because you realized that you were solving the wrong problem? Right? So this is where you got to stop before you rush to the first good idea and go, wait a second, what's the real issue here? What are we actually trying to solve? How strong is the evidence that I have to support my conclusion? I'm thinking this is the problem. Boom, here's the answer. But do I have any evidence to actually support that? Any objective facts or data? What else could be going on in this situation that I'm not aware of, that I'm not considering? Ask yourself, what information do I not have? What information do I need? What information is left out? Ask yourself, are there any other reasonable conclusions that are possible aside from the one that I rushed to? This is where asking other people could be helpful because, Jim might say, well, have you considered this? Oh, and Georgia might say, well, have you thought about that? Oh, and Carly might say, well, here's an idea. Oh, and now all of a sudden the context is bigger and maybe you get more clarity about what the real issue is. What understandable thing could other people be thinking? And rather than guess, go ask those other people. Ask your customers what they think the real issue is. Ask your team members what they think the real issue is. Here's another tool. It's called the 5 Whys. It's the 5 Whys. Anybody heard of this? It's a tool for helping you figure out what the actual problem is. So now let's walk through this here real quick. Let's say the situation is the robot stopped working. The whole point of 5 Whys is to ask why at least 5 times so that you get greater clarity about what the real problem is. So what's the first question we should ask? The robot stopped working. Why did the robot stop working? Well, the circuit overloaded, causing a blown fuse. What's the next question? Is it plugged in? Is it turned on? Why? Why did the fuse blow? Well, the circuit overloaded, the fuse blew because there was insufficient lubrication on the bearings. They locked up, causing an overload, which blew the fuse. Now, if we didn't ask those questions, how many of you know people that would have just replaced the fuse? Not asking, right? Well, just put a new fuse in there, bam. And what's going to happen if you don't understand the root cause of this? What's going to happen once you replace the fuse? It's going to blow again. And then some folks are like, well, maybe the fuse was bad. They just put another fuse in here. After about 10 fuses, you might start to ask, well, maybe it's not the fuse. Time out. Ask the questions first before you start going down this thing of repair, and you're not repairing the right thing. So why was there insufficient lubrication on the bearings? Because the oil pump on the robot is not circulating sufficient oil. Why is it not circulating sufficient oil? Because the intake valve is clogged with metal shavings. Oh. Why is the intake clogged with metal shavings? Because there's no filter on the pump. Ah, so now we got to replace the filter, right? Then replace the fuse, test it, and make sure everything works. Does this make sense, folks? We could keep going through the process and we say, okay, well, why is there no filter on the pump? Well, because Bob, who's supposed to check this, didn't check it. Why didn't Bob check it? Well, because, right? So we can keep going on until we figure out what the actual issue is, right? And if anyone here is named Bob, no offense. That's just my general name for men, right? So that's the 5 whys. So think about a problem that you're dealing with, right? And ask yourself, why are we having this problem? Because of this. Okay, well, why is that true? Well, because of that. Well, why is that true? Well, because of that. Well, why is that true? It may not take you 5 whys. It might take you 3, and you're like, boom, that's it. It might take you 7. It might take you 8. The point is, be curious. Be in the process of discovery. Exactly, Karen. You keep drilling down until you get more detail. Unless you're dealing with a life or death situation, right? Most of us have the time to get off that crazy hamster wheel of life that's always spinning faster, wanting us to get stuff done. Most of us have time to get off of that wheel and step back and go, what's really going on here? And to challenge our thinking. Is that helpful for anybody? There's a corollary to this, and it's called the 5 hows. What? Yeah, the 5 hows. So the 5 whys are designed to help you get to the root cause. The 5 hows are used to help you develop the details of a solution to the problem. So if we go back through our robot example, how do we prevent blown fuses in the robot? We make sure there's sufficient lubrication on the bearings. How do we do that? We make sure the oil pump is working. How do we do that? We make sure the intake isn't clogged. How do we do that? Well, we make sure there's a clean filter on it. Well, how do we do that? We establish a regular maintenance procedure. 5 whys to get to the root cause, 5 hows to get to the solution. Does that make sense, folks? It's a process. It is a process. Now, here's the last thing I want to share with you, and then we've got time for Q&A. How to rationally evaluate something subjective, right? Creative ideas. Well, one way is to do some research. Has anyone done something like this creative idea before? Does this exist anywhere in the world, right? There's some organizations out there doing wildly crazy, imaginative, inventive things, right? Things that the business term these days is that are disruptive, right? Here's a crazy idea. What if I started renting a room out in my house to strangers? That's a crazy idea, right? What business did that turn into? Airbnb, right? What if I started giving rides in my car to strangers and charging them money to take them places? What if? That's an insane idea, right? What's that turned into? Uber and Lyft, right? Hey, what if we didn't actually have a store, but people could buy things like books and electronics and clothing and supplies, but there was no store? Amazon, crazy creative idea, and yet these are three of the largest companies, and most successful companies in the world in some measurements, right? What are some other crazy ideas that you've heard of? Just drop it in the chat box. Craigslist. Yeah. Well, we already have newspapers. And now you look at Craigslist. All powered by technology and the assets of LinkedIn, Tesla, SpaceX, right? Yeah, Uber and Lyft seem to be the only insane ones here. Other countries around the world. Let me go back to that comment. I've been doing this in the 80s. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Here's an insane idea. Guarantee health care for everybody. Oh, but I digress. Again, many countries around the world have been doing this for decades, and some countries have yet to figure this out. Anyway, let me get off that soapbox for a moment. But do some research. Find out what companies, organizations are doing that are creative, that they have tried to things they've done to solve their problems. I'm going to recommend a couple of books to you. Who likes to read? Here's one, Less is More, How Great Companies Use Productivity as a Competitive Tool in Business by Jason Jennings. I found this to be a helpful book. He and his team of researchers studied productive, efficient, effective organizations around the globe for a few years, and they came up with a list of who is most productive and efficient and why. Fascinating look. And some of these people are doing some pretty amazing things. Here's another book that I absolutely love. It's called Maverick, the story about the world's most unusual workplace. It's by Ricardo Semler. This is about a company in Brazil. We got somebody from Brazil on the line today. It's a company called Simco. And they were doing work from home stuff like before the pandemic, like in the 80s, right? They were giving people autonomy and freedom. One of the other cool things about them, here's a crazy idea. They let employees choose their own salary. Stacy's head just exploded. What? Yeah, go. I'm ordering that book right now on Amazon. How does that work? But anyway, there are people out there who are doing things, creative things, solving problems that you're still struggling with. Go do some research and find out who they are and what they've done. Apply a design thinking process. LearnIt has a class called Design Thinking, where we actually walk through a structured framework for how to approach problems and do problem solving. And I've shared some tools with you today from that class, but there are others. So within that design thinking process, you walk through and you try to define the problem as best you can. And then you come up with a prototype, right? Not just one, but 2 or 3 different possible solutions. And then you test them. You see how well they work. And then based on empirical experience and information, then you know which solution to go with. Most people just go, well, here's the problem, here's the solution, bam, let's run with it. Time out. You might want to rethink that, right? And then evaluate, is that actually working, right? Does that actually work? Ask your customers, ask your team members, right, what they want, what their needs are. So anyway, those are a few ideas about creativity as we get older. How do we spark creativity? Step-by-step processes for not only boosting creativity, but also trying to solve problems and things that actually people are doing in the real world. So that's all I got. Who's got some questions?
James, thank you so much. Everyone, will open it up for questions, but just if you enjoyed today's session, just drop us a little love in the chat, give a little reaction, show James some love.
My birthday's
Awesome.
coming up in a couple of weeks, so.
I love it.
40.
And if you have questions, we'll open it up in a moment to come off mute. Before we do that, while we have folks here, I just want to share with you a couple of ways to kind of stay engaged if you're interested in joining us for more sessions and kind of some of the sessions that James had mentioned to dive a little bit deeper. So I'll just go ahead and share my screen really quick, and then we'll go back to some questions. But for today's recording and presentation, you can actually go ahead and click this QR code here and join offsite that way. Again, we'll be posting the recording and the presentation from today this afternoon. And there's also live instructor help. So if you ask a question in offsite, it could be about Excel, Outlook, some of the tech skills that we train on, as well as professional development. So anything you heard today, if you have questions, if you're kind of mulling over this later today, you can ask us in offsite and we'll get back to you within 2 business days. And that's from our team of experts. And we also have exclusive Ask the Expert sessions in offsite, as well as discounts on some of the full-length workshops that James had mentioned. A couple of those that we have coming up, we have our full-length workshops on design thinking and move from operational manager to strategic leader. I believe we have both of those coming up in late July, early August. So I'll post the dates for those. I'll email those out. But to take a full-length workshop, those are 2 2-hour sessions. And again, we kind of dive deeper into some of the content that we went over today as well. So I will email out more information about that if you're interested. There are discounts since you're all here and engaged already in our community. So I will share those out with you as well. But per usual, please reach out to myself and Marissa via email or in offsite, and we're happy to help you and kind of help you design a learning path. That's kind of what we do here at Learn It. So with that, we can open it back up to questions. James, I do have one question, and then I really want to open it up to the community. But just because we do have some kind of leaders in HR and kind of learning and development that are thinking about ways to kind of spark creativity for their team. Maybe, work from home has become more permanent. Maybe people aren't that thrilled about some of the back to the office policies that are coming in place. There's just a transition. So do you have any thoughts around how leaders in general can think about kind of creative ways to engage their team to kind of, make sure people are kind of feeling healthy and well taken care of and motivated through this time of transition, or just ways to think about helping their people be creative and stay kind of happy and healthy through this kind of opening period we're in? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I tend to go back to Maslow's hierarchy for for some of this stuff. And if you're not familiar with it, look up MASLOW, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When people are experiencing extreme stress and chaos and rapid change, they're usually down at the bottom of that hierarchy where they're prioritizing just physiological needs: air, food, water, sleep, shelter, and security, which is the second level. Security of employment, security of resources, security of home and livelihood, et cetera. So during times of rapid change, you're expecting creativity, which is usually up here at the highest end of Maslow's hierarchy, right? But if you've got people under stress and anxiety because of rapid change, they're not living up here. They're living down here towards the bottom. So as a leader, you've got to reach out to folks and check in on them as human beings. How are they doing? Are they okay? How are they feeling? Have sessions with people where they just get to share what's going on. If your organization has an employee assistance program, make sure that all of your team members are aware of that and encourage them to take advantage of that, because hopefully you have good counselors and coaches and support people. Resources are available to help folks who might be struggling with these times of rapid change. Check in on people as human beings first. You've got to do that. If you don't do that, some folks will disconnect, either won't be as creative, they won't be productive, or they might wind up leaving. Right? I was reading some statistic the other day about how resignations, people voluntarily leaving the workplace, had diminished significantly during 2020. They're actually up over 2.5% this year, because I think once folks have started to figure out the groove and how to work in this new normal, they're looking at other options. So I would suggest that. On the creativity side, create more opportunities for people to work together, to brainstorm, to do problem solving sessions together, right? Reach out to your customers, your clients, and ask them, what are their needs right now, right? Because you're not selling products or services, you're selling solutions. Solutions to what? People's problems, right? For some of us, the problems have changed. Therefore, the solutions have to change. If we're not changing, if we're trying to sell the old solutions to new problems, guess what? You're going to have problems yourself, right? So you've got to constantly adapt, right? Maslow and Darwin, Maslow and Darwin, Maslow and Darwin. That's what you got to think, right? Check in on people and evolve. Check in on people and evolve. All right, what else? Does that help, Carly?
Yeah, no, thank you, James. It's really helpful. And folks, feel free to come off mute, or you can raise your hand, put it in the chat.
Nobody got 130 people. Nobody's got a question.
Art, I saw you come a little closer. Do you have a question? No, I'm just picking on you.
All right, I got one if no one else does. Any other books or references, classes on creative thinking? Like, I mean, you had the books earlier, but just, I don't know, any other things if we want to develop this further? I heard there might be a couple classes coming up, like too, but I don't know, this is something really interesting to me.
Yeah, great question, Dan. Thanks for asking. One that I've taught a fair amount that seems to be very popular is, how many of you are technical people, but you have to give presentations?
Actually, right now.
Okay, thank you. Storytelling with data. Check out that class, because it talks about how to different frameworks for telling your story, but not overwhelming people with that fire hose of information. Right? So you get your point across and with greater impact. So storytelling with data, check that out. There's also a class on creative thinking, and there's one on critical thinking, in addition to the one I mentioned earlier about moving from an operational manager to a strategic leader. So any of those four, you might find great benefit in. Thanks for the question, Dan. Change requires a lot of stakeholder management. Hold on, let me, what guidance do you give on this, given everyone's lens will be different? Yeah, that's a big one to unpack, because it's got lots of layers. Here's the first thing I would say about that relationship. What you're trying to do is influence people at the higher levels who may not see things the way you do, right? You're not going to influence them unless you get close to them. So look at developing relationships with the senior leaders in your organization, right? Because through the power of relationship, you have a greater chance of influence, because you don't have control, right? But you might be able to influence. How do you do that? Proximity. You got to get closer to folks. You got to work on building relationships. I don't want to sound like I'm selling classes here, but there's another course called Influencing Without Authority that might be useful for that. But get to know them. There's another thing that Jason Jennings talks about in his book, Less is More, about how these most productive organizations operate from a simple, big objective. There's an overarching thing that everybody in the organization knows and is aligned with, regardless of department or function. In some organizations, it might be quality. In some, it might be safety. In some, it might be customer service. So what is the overarching objective for your organization? If your senior leaders have determined that, then whatever ideas you present to them should be in alignment with those big objectives, or that big objective. If they haven't determined that, this is your opportunity to school them, to introduce them to this concept of having a defining, simple, big objective that all objectives align to. It's your camera-free day. I love that. A camera-free day. Thanks, Despina. The great suggestion. Great idea. Book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Yeah, that's a good one too, Jose. Thank you. You're welcome, Lena. Anything else, folks?
James, I don't know if you already got this one, but from Despina, she asked a good one. Change requires a lot of stakeholder management. What guidance do you have on this given everyone's lens will be a little bit different?
He answered that one, Carly.
Yeah,
I'm
those are
very
right.
happy
Oh, you
with the
did?
answer.
Okay, sorry. I'm sorry. I was trying to
That's
catch up
all
on.
right.
I was trying to catch up on questions. There's so many good ones coming through that I didn't even get to register the response I could get.
Daniel just asked one about the Captain America clip. How do I figure out it's possible to unscrew the screw and drop the flag with such a calm and confidence? Because he practiced mindfulness. That's just a part of who he is, right? Look at all those other guys. They're like, oh, well, we got to hurry, climb up the pole and get the flag off. And because what, right? So they were all focused on activity, right? That hamster wheel kind of mentality. Meanwhile, he stepped back. He actually, even though it wasn't mentioned, he actually engaged in design thinking. He stepped back to look at the problem. He saw people trying out a solution, scurry up the pole. Clearly, several people tried that. It wasn't working. So he had an opportunity to look at it and ask questions, right? Is this working? No. Why isn't it working? Because they can't get any traction on the pole. Is there another way to do this? A non-obvious way. So when they all moved away, he's looking at the flag. He's looking down at the bottom. He goes, oh, well, it looks like you can just unscrew that, pull that out, and the pole will drop. Let me try that. Boom, boom, bam. Here's your flag, sir. He didn't rush to try to solve. He tried to understand first. And this is what Stephen Covey talks about in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Seek first to what? Understand. Thank you, Loveson. Seek first to understand. And that's what he did. So how do you develop that? Don't rush to a solution. Don't rush to an assumption. Step back, ask those critical thinking questions. What's the real issue here, right? What has worked? What has not worked? What have we not tried, right? That's how he did that. Is it safe to say that when an issue arises, step back and look at it? And it'll be absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Step back and look at it and go, okay. Because most of the time, we do this. Problem solving, we put the blinders on, we have like this narrow laser-like focus. What we really need to do is take those blinders off and step back and go, okay, what's really going on here? What's the context in which this is happening, right? What else might be going on right now that's affecting this outcome? It's a challenge for so many people because so many of us have been conditioned, to just hurry, 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 get it done, get it done, get it done. We've got to resist that. Unless it's a life or death situation, you have the time. You have the time to step back and ask questions. And that's what I would encourage you all to do. Nature walks actually help me with deconstructing clutter after I've done the research. Yeah, spend time in nature. Here's another thing. Find your creative place. I think most of us, if not all of us, have one. How many of you have that place that when you're in that place or in that activity, bam, ideas just start coming to you? Carly, where's your creative place?
The ocean.
The ocean.
Surfing.
Surfing. Georgina says it's knitting. For me, it's the shower. I go in the shower. I don't know if it's the water. The ideas just start coming. It's like, oh, what? I have no place to write them down. But anyways, I got to make sure I write them down right after that. Right. But also sometimes walking for me. If I'm walking, then as I get movement in my body, then the movement starts to happen in my creative being. Right. Waterfall, gardening, mountains, floating in the pool, walking a circle. Right. The shower, gardening. Right. So find your creative space. Take your problem there. But no go, I'm going gardening. Now I have to solve this problem. No. Just go gardening. And somewhere in the middle of doing what you do, bam, an idea will pop in. Trust that process because you know it has worked for you before. It's not always linear or logical, but it usually works. Shower, peace alone with your thoughts, maybe bring phone, record your thoughts. Yeah, maybe not directly in the shower. I don't know how water resistant your phone is. But, once you get out, then, hey, here's an idea. Long baths, right? Absolutely. Whatever it takes. You need a Chinograph pencil to write on the tiles. Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Good suggestion. Always carry a recorder or note cards to capture ideas. Yeah, have a notebook by your bed. How many of you like have dreams or wake up in the middle of the night? Oh my gosh, that's it. Okay, write it down. Because if you think I'm going to remember this in the morning, no, you're not. In the history of I'll remember this in the morning, that has never happened. So just write it down as soon as you're thinking of it, and then close it and go back to sleep. When you wake up, you go, "Why was a genius at 2 a.m.?" Right? We tend to forget most of the dreams. Yeah. Who wrote the Maverick book? His name is Ricardo Semler, Semler. Ricardo Semler, Semler. He wrote a follow-up book to this 10 years later called The 7-Day Weekend. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So get both of those. Okay. Anything else? I just want to applaud you all again for showing up, really early in the morning, really late at night, or whatever time it is from wherever you are, because what that shows to me is that you are learners. You value learning, you value knowledge, you value personal and professional development, and you will get up early or stay up late to get that done. And so I'm impressed. I'm awed by all of you. And hopefully it also suggests that you're getting value out of this. So if you're not a member of Offsite, join Offsite. It's free, and take advantage of this and share it with others. If you know other people that could benefit from this, family, friends, folks in your workplace, come, right? So share it with them. Tell them to come, show up, spend an hour, learn some tools, and go back and be awesome, or more awesome.
Thank you so much, James. And I want to echo that too. It's just great to see so many familiar faces. Dan, Mary, Art, Patrick, so many. So thank you for coming back. And again, also, if you're new, if you found us on YouTube, it's just great to have you. And just, I know I'm going to send out a lot of the workshops to dive deeper. Again, if you want to stay a part of this community, the best way to kind of stay up to date and even find the Zoom link just so you can easily join week over week and kind of build that habit and keep joining us for different learning sessions really is an Offsite. So Marissa, if you don't mind just putting the link to join an Offsite, that would be amazing. I think I dropped it in there as well. But these are the events we have coming up next week. We have some amazing guest speakers coming. Amy Bockerstedt, who actually made history and kicked off one of the world titles with, Gary, I'm forgetting his name. But anyways, I'll send out the YouTube video. She's going to be speaking next week with her father on the power of confidence and being a disabilities advocate. And then we have another guest speaker on the 16th. So really exciting stuff. And as always, we're here to support you. We're here to be here with you in community. Thank you so much, James. Thank you, Marissa. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Please do reach out to us with questions, comments, and have a safe and healthy 4th of July. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Happy 4th.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you all.